Hey, what are you doing? That hurts. Where is this? What are you planning to do to me? One day, my mother-in-law grabbed me from behind and locked me in complete darkness. She had trained in boxing before, so she could easily lift a single woman. I couldn't resist as my eyes, mouth, and limbs were all bound. Be quiet. This is your fault for being so insolent. How dare you, a mere daughter-in-law, defy me? Ever since you came, you've ruined my happy life. Everything, absolutely everything, is your fault. Saying this, my mother-in-law left me immobilized and went somewhere. In this state where I couldn't see anything or call for help, my anxiety gradually transformed into terror. What should I do? Am I going to die here without anyone finding me? I still wanted to spend wonderful days with my husband and have children. But is my life going to end at the hands of my mother-in-law? The moment I thought this, intense fear swept through my body again, and I kept making voiceless cries. My voice reached no one. My name is Erin, and I'm just an ordinary housewife. I married Ron a few years ago, and we've been living happily together until today. I met Ron at the company where I started working after graduating from college, and we began dating. Although the path to marriage had its ups and downs, the fact that I'm now happily married is all that matters. Recently, we made a decision that would likely accelerate our happiness even further, buying our own home. And not just any home, a custom-built house. While the idea that owning a home equals happiness might be a bit old-fashioned, being able to choose the floor plan and create a house just for us is no small feat, and being fortunate enough to do so makes me very happy. Apartments have their advantages, but if we're going to settle down somewhere, a house would be better, right? Ron, who had grown up in his parents' house and lived in detached homes all his life, readily agreed to building our own home. Once decided, things moved quickly. Within days of deciding to build our home, we were discussing floor plans and various requirements with the home builder, and plans progressed steadily. Finally, our home was completed. That day, we came for the handover of our newly completed home. We weren't the only ones visiting the new house. My in-laws said they wanted to see it too, so they joined us. To be honest, I was a bit uncomfortable with this. Although we live separately from my in-laws and only meet occasionally, so I don't know them very well yet, there are some things I can tell. While there's nothing particularly wrong with my father-in-law, my mother-in-law is incredibly critical. She starts with negativity for everything and lists all the things she doesn't like. When I decided to marry Ron and went to greet his parents, while my father-in-law contrasted warmly by saying, "Please take care of my son," my mother-in-law kept criticizing me, saying things like, "Isn't there a better woman out there?" and, "Can such a skinny body bear healthy children?" Of course, I understand the need to evaluate your son's marriage partner from various perspectives, but there should be a better way to express such concerns. Especially regarding physical appearance, even after marriage, she would say things like, "Eat more and gain weight," or "Do strength training," whenever we met. Speaking of my mother-in-law, she had a surprisingly sturdy and healthy-looking body for her age. When I asked Ron, "Why is your mother so well-built?" it turns out that her family has practiced boxing for generations. Even Ron had done boxing until high school, which explains his good physique. I suppose that's the secret to physical excellence in athletic families. Perhaps because of these values, my mother-in-law doesn't like my build. Moreover, while it would be one thing if these were just concerns about my health, what she's actually focused on is my potential future children. I'm going to make my grandchild a great boxing champion. That's my dream. I've heard those words countless times. I'm not even pregnant yet. With a mother-in-law like that, it was inevitable that she would find fault with our new home. Hey, there's no room large enough to teach boxing. And where's our room? We're not living together now, but we will in the future, right? Besides, this house feels old-fashioned overall. Underfloor storage in the kitchen, do modern houses even have that? Aaron, could it be that you have no aesthetic sense? That's what my mother-in-law said after entering and looking around our newly built home. Why would she say such mood-dampening things when my husband and I are about to start living here? The only consolation was that Ron and his father took my side. This is the house where Aaron and I are going to live together. Why should we have to match it to your taste, Mom? Besides, we haven't even discussed living together, let alone decided anything about it. Don't make such arbitrary decisions. My father-in-law nodded beside him and added his support. That's right, Ron and Aaron have kindly invited us to see their new house today. We should be grateful for just that. Don't say such rude things. Well, the reason we invited my in-laws was that my mother-in-law had insisted on seeing the house. Scolded by Ron and my father-in-law, my mother-in-law reluctantly said, I know, and fell silent for a while. Then my father-in-law turned to me and said, by the way, I'm happy that you invited us, but wouldn't you like to invite your family too? It feels wrong to only accommodate us. Come to think of it, I haven't met your sister yet, have I? I'd very much like to greet her. My father-in-law probably tried to change the awkward atmosphere by bringing up a new topic, but that particular subject wasn't very welcome. Well, my family lives far away, so it's not easy to arrange quickly. Well, there's no rush, so I'm thinking about it for some time later. But as for my sister, well, my sister and I don't get along very well. When I said this looking down, my father-in-law made an apologetic face as if he'd said something he shouldn't have and said, I'm sorry. No, it's totally fine. Please don't worry about it, I apologized too. This was my fault. I feel like I could have said it better. However, there was a reason why it was difficult to explain to my in-laws why my sister and I didn't get along. And so we fell back into silence, and the new house tour ended in an awkward atmosphere. Despite the inauspicious atmosphere, Ron and I moved our belongings into the new house and successfully began our new life. Indeed, having a larger house compared to an apartment gives a sense of openness that feels good. We don't have to worry as much about noise as we did in the apartment, and it's more relaxed. As my mother-in-law pointed out, we might even consider having children. Of course, it's not all positive. Cleaning a larger space will be more work, and running costs like the mortgage and property tax will be considerable from now on. But we'll probably get used to those things, and for now, I just want to feel unbridled joy. If only we could continue this happy life. Such thoughts proved futile, as a few months after moving into our new house, an ominous shadow crept into our lives. One day, we received news that my father-in-law had been injured. As we heard the story, he had been taking his daily walk when he slipped on some stairs at a pedestrian bridge, perhaps because the previous day's rain hadn't completely dried. Fortunately, it wasn't life-threatening, but he had cut his head and bruised his whole body. What was even more serious was that he had broken both legs. While one leg only had a fracture, neither leg was in perfect condition. Due to these circumstances, my father-in-law needed care. Just when we thought we could get by with, thank goodness it wasn't life-threatening. Let's visit him soon, my mother-in-law seized the opportunity to propose living together. It's hard taking care of a husband who can't move. After all, I'm just a fragile woman, aren't I? So I thought I'd like your help by living together. Only now does she call herself a fragile woman. Usually, she insults me about my poor physique and acts superior. While I'm worried about my father-in-law, living with my mother-in-law is worrying in a different way. Well, I understand it's hard for mom to take care of dad alone, but living together depends on what Aaron says, Ron told his mother. While it might sound like he was being considerate of me, it really just meant I had to make the choice about living together. And I didn't have the courage to say, I'm concerned about father-in-law but don't want to live together. In the end, a few days later, my in-laws came to live in our new house. And as expected, my mother-in-law started harassing me. After moving in together, she pushed all the care for my father-in-law onto me, while she either watched TV in the living room or went running to keep in shape. If she has that much energy, taking care of my father-in-law shouldn't be too difficult. She also complains about my housework, especially my cooking. Make more muscle-friendly meals. Isn't there too much fat in this? This is inedible. My mother-in-law would say this and throw all the food I made into the garbage. Then she would go to the nearby supermarket and return with chicken and milk. I don't mind if she has particular preferences about food. Everyone has their freedom. But she could just say, I won't eat it, before I prepare the meal. No, my mother-in-law probably enjoys intentionally doing things that hurt me. She also throws my laundry into the garden, saying, this way of hanging clothes will cause wrinkles, do it again. Of course, the clothes thrown and covered in sand are all mine, while she carefully rehangs the clothes belonging to herself, my father-in-law, and Ron. Even with cleaning, she finds fault saying things like, the corners aren't clean enough, or, there are fingerprints on the desk, and, do it all over again, then dumps the vacuum cleaner's contents all over the room. And if I complain saying, please stop, she always responds with, you lack the resolve to be a proper wife. Really, where did she learn such daughter-in-law harassment? Has she been spending too much time on the internet? Nevertheless, I was taking psychological damage. Between the unfamiliar caregiving and my mother-in-law's attitude, both physical and mental fatigue were accumulating. Around the time my father-in-law's injury was mostly healed and close to full recovery, I finally told Ron, I can't take it anymore. Although Ron hadn't witnessed me being harassed due to work and other reasons, he had apparently noticed there were problems with his mother from my unusual level of exhaustion. I'm sorry I couldn't listen to your concerns earlier. If you've reached your limit, let's have mom and dad move out. Fortunately, dad's injury has improved considerably, and their old house is still there. I'll talk to them tomorrow. What? Their old house hadn't been sold yet. When I asked Ron for details, it seems my father-in-law had delayed selling the house so they could end the living arrangement if things didn't work out. I'm so grateful for my father-in-law's thoughtfulness. While I felt bad about making my father-in-law leave too, I no longer had the capacity to think about anything beyond protecting my own mental health. The next day, Ron said, Mom, I heard from Aaron. Well, since we're all human, it's natural that some people get along and others don't. But that's no reason to bully her. If you dislike Aaron that much, we'll end this living arrangement. I'm sorry, Dad, but please leave. Hearing this, my father-in-law made a face that seemed to say, it can't be helped. I wondered how my mother-in-law was feeling as I observed her expression. I thought she would explode in anger at me for telling Ron and shower me with abuse. However, such expectations were wrong. My mother-in-law collapsed to her knees in front of us and began wailing loudly. "No, please don't say such terrible things. I was just possessed by something momentarily. Really, I won't do it again, please forgive me." Saying this, my mother-in-law repeatedly prostrated herself before us. When it went this far, even I couldn't tell her to leave. I decided to forgive my mother-in-law. However, I would soon realize this choice was a mistake. For a while after that, we lived more amicably than before. My father-in-law's injury had healed completely, so he no longer needed care, and my burden was minimal. If this life continued, maybe the daughter-in-law harassment would someday be just a funny story. It was around the time I started thinking such thoughts. One day, Ron told me he had a week-long business trip scheduled. Come to think of it, since my mother-in-law's harassment had stopped, Ron hadn't been away from home for more than a day. Perhaps this week would be a crucial test for my mother-in-law and me. Whether she would harass me without Ron's eyes on us. While I was thinking about such things, that crucial moment never came. This was because my mother-in-law decided to go on a trip with my father-in-law during Ron's business trip. "Aaron, you must be tired from your daily housework, right? So I thought you should relax and take it easy while Ron is away. You probably couldn't rest easy with us around, right? Well, it's only for 2 nights and 3 days though." And so it was suddenly decided that I would temporarily live alone during Ron's business trip. However, this was convenient. Actually, my sister, with whom I had been almost completely estranged, had recently said, "I want to talk about something, can we meet?" Normally, if someone you're estranged from says, "I want to talk," you'd be wary, but somehow I feel this won't be a bad conversation. That's why I wanted to meet right away, but with housework and living with my in-laws, I hadn't been able to secure time to meet my sister. But if I'm going to be alone in the house, I can invite my sister. I also want to show her our newly built home. When I communicated this, my sister replied, "Sure," so I was about to reunite with her after several years. On the day of the business trip, Ron left home about 2 hours later than usual to head directly to his destination. My in-laws had also completed their travel preparations and left a few minutes ago. And a few minutes after that, my sister Halia came to the house. Although it was earlier than planned, I didn't mind at all. My sister hadn't changed much since the old days, and it seemed Halia thought the same about me. We hugged each other and said, "It's been so long," and when we tried to check our calendars on our phones saying, "When was the last time we met?" we noticed our phone cases were the same. What a coincidence. Even though we hadn't properly talked for years, it felt like we were still connected somehow. Because of things like that, we were able to instantly bridge the gap of time we hadn't seen each other. So the reason I came today is, just as Halia was about to get to the main point after I served her tea and we sat down, my phone rang. It was from Ron. Halia looked at me and said, "Go ahead and answer it," so I did. "Aaron, I'm sorry. I forgot some documents I need for today's business trip in my room. I hate to ask, but could you bring them to the station? I'm really sorry." Thinking this was serious, I asked Halia, "Is that okay?" "It's fine. We haven't talked for years, so what's a few more hours?" she joked in response. So I said, "I'll be back in about an hour," and dashed to the station with Ron's requested belongings. An hour later. When I returned home, Halia's shoes were still at the entrance. I called out, "I'm home," but there was no response from Halia. Had she fallen asleep? Thinking this, I went to the living room, but couldn't find her anywhere. I tried calling Halia's phone. Then, in this room where I was alone, Halia's phone rang on the desk. 3 days later, my in-laws returned from their trip. And Ron and I greeted them as they came back home. Why is Ron already back? The business trip was supposed to be a week. And Aaron, why are you? More than Ron, your reaction suggests it's strange that I'm even here. My mother-in-law seemed to realize her slip of the tongue and said, "That's not it," but when she saw my sister Halia entering the living room, she began sweating and trembling as if having a bad dream. Going back to that day when Halia came to visit. When I returned home after delivering Ron's belongings, although her shoes and belongings like her phone remained, Halia had disappeared from the house. With her phone still here, there was no point in calling, and her home wasn't close enough to return within an hour. So there was no point in contacting her family, and anyway, it made no sense that she would leave her belongings. Wondering if she might be in the bathroom, I searched the entire house but couldn't find her. Then I heard suspicious sounds coming from the kitchen. When I went to check, the sound was coming from the underfloor storage. When I gathered my courage and opened it, there was Halia. When I asked her why she was in such a place, she revealed something incredible. I think it was Ron's mother, but as soon as she came back home, she suddenly told me to get a vase from the underfloor storage. I tried to explain that I wasn't Aaron, but she came at me aggressively. So I opened the underfloor storage, but there was nothing there, and when I tried to ask what was going on, she lifted me from behind and threw me in. Oh no. So my mother-in-law hadn't reformed after all. Then she said things like, "It's your fault Ron hates me," and "How dare you defy me, mere daughter-in-law," and finally, "Suffer from hunger until we return." She took my phone and closed the door. I couldn't open it from the inside, and who knows what would have happened if you hadn't come. How terrible. So if Halia hadn't come to visit, I would have been trapped in the underfloor storage until my in-laws returned. Actually, Halia and I are twins. Although I had told my in-laws I had a sister, I hadn't mentioned we were twins. So my mother-in-law probably mistook Halia for me and locked her in the underfloor storage. Since our phone cases were the same, she probably didn't think it belonged to someone else. She must have thought that taking the phone would prevent contact with anyone, so she left it on the desk. She probably told my father-in-law she had forgotten something and came back home. Really, what nerve. By the way, the reason Halia and I had fallen out was that when I started dating Ron, Halia had also fallen for him. That triggered us to become rivals competing for Ron, viewing each other as enemies, and led to our estrangement when Ron and I got engaged. However, Halia had reconsidered various things and came to make amends, but because of my mother-in-law, she got caught up in this situation. Later, when Ron questioned his mother about why she did this, she answered that, before going on the trip, I planned to lock Aaron in the underfloor storage to teach her about hierarchy through fear. That's ridiculous. This time I've really lost my patience. Dad, I'm sorry, but this living arrangement ends here. Take Mom and go back home. I won't let Mom see Aaron anymore, and I won't see her either. We're cutting ties. Hearing these words, my father-in-law made a face that seemed to say, "It can't be helped." "Please, I'm really sorry," my mother-in-law cried again and prostrated herself, but no one believed her anymore. "I could report you to the police, Mom." But Halia said, "That's not necessary, so we're just cutting ties." Leave before I change my mind. Even my mother-in-law seemed to have no choice but to obey Ron when the word police came up, and she began packing her things hurriedly. The next day, she left with my father-in-law. Thus, I was finally freed from my mother-in-law's harassment. A few days later, Halia visited again to tell me what she had wanted to say that day. Actually, what I wanted to tell you was, "You're getting married, right?" Halia looked surprised for a moment, but then relaxed her face and laughed, saying, "You could tell, huh?" Since we were young, we'd occasionally experienced strange sympathy. It was easier to transmit when emotions were strong, and we could intuitively understand each other's state. Whether this was a twin-specific ability or just coincidence, we don't know, but because we could understand each other's feelings, our rivalry over Ron had become particularly intense. Because we could tell the other person was serious. Well, that's all in the past now. Ron and I started living happily again in our home, and Halia seems to be getting along well with her partner. I thought this would be the end of the story, but one day we received sad news from my father-in-law. It turns out he had decided to divorce. Since being cut off by Ron, my mother-in-law had become emotionally unstable and increasingly prone to outbursts, often taking it out on my father-in-law. Since my mother-in-law was exceptionally strong compared to her peers, it was difficult for my father-in-law to restrain her, and after learning about what she had done to me, his feelings for her had cooled, leading to this decision. And to divide their assets for this, they would demolish their old house, sell the land, and convert it to money. Ron, if you want to take a last look at the house, come soon. Also, your mother's mental state isn't good, so I think she'll be entering a facility. Well, don't worry about it. When I heard this, I honestly felt a sense of guilt. However, this was my mother-in-law's own doing, and it was my father-in-law's decision, so it wasn't my place to interfere. The day before their house was to be demolished, I received a text message from my mother-in-law. "I have truly caused you great trouble. I will soon be moving into a nursing home and likely won't be able to go out as before. Therefore, I would like to apologize to you in person one last time, so I request that you come to the house before it's demolished tonight." It was a message that perfectly embodied humility and deference. To think that my incredibly arrogant mother-in-law would say such things. Perhaps being abandoned by everyone and facing life in a facility had made her repent. Thinking this, I, who had been feeling guilty these past few days, wanted to grant my mother-in-law's final wish. And so that night, I visited their house that would be torn down the next day. While I waited in front of the house, I saw my mother-in-law approaching from afar. My mother-in-law waved at me and jogged toward me, not wanting to keep me waiting. Then her running speed seemed to gradually increase, reaching top speed by the time she got close to me. Before I knew it, I was lying in the garden of their house. I felt pain in my abdomen and back, and when I looked, my mother-in-law was straddling my lower body. Yes, I had been tackled by my mother-in-law and knocked down into the garden. The moment I realized this, I was struck with terror and tried to scream, but there was no chance as my mother-in-law moved behind me and covered my mouth with her palm. Then I felt pressure from her arm around my carotid artery, and everything went dark. When I regained consciousness, it was still pitch black in front of me. It seemed tape or something similar had been applied, robbing me of my vision. Moreover, the tape wasn't just on my eyes, my mouth and all my limbs were bound too. I sensed someone nearby. When I tried to call for help, my voice was barely audible. However, perhaps noticing I had regained consciousness, the person nearby spoke. You brought this on yourself. It was my mother-in-law's voice. And I thought 3 times the charm. I really thought she had reformed this time. I'm such a fool. I was completely deceived by my mother-in-law's message. Even though Ron had said, I can't really recommend meeting with his mother, I felt sorry for her and came anyway. That's right, Ron. Maybe he would notice something wrong when he got home. Then I remembered. Ron was on a business trip today. When Halia was locked in the underfloor storage, I contacted Ron, and he immediately cut short what was supposed to be a week-long business trip to return. Because of that, he now had to go on another business trip to finish his work. What should I do? While desperately thinking, my mother-in-law started speaking again. It's all your fault. Since you came, my family gradually fell apart. I lost everyone on my side. And finally, everything shattered. It's all your fault. So I'm going to make you disappear. I'll leave you in this house. Then tomorrow, you'll be torn apart with it. Why am I doing this, you ask? It's obvious. Since the family fell apart after you came, if you disappear, my family will return to normal. I'm such a genius. It seems my mother-in-law had truly lost her mind. But I can't worry about that now. At this rate, my body might really be torn apart tomorrow. What should I do? My mind is overwhelmed with anxiety and fear. I can't stop shaking. Ignoring my terror, my mother-in-law said, well then, I'm heading back. Thanks for everything, and left. I tried to cry out for help many times, making voiceless sounds. But my mouth was taped shut, and being inside the house, it was meaningless anyway. And so, without anyone noticing me, tomorrow I would be cut in half by heavy machinery and leave this world. Well, thankfully that didn't happen. While I was having such dark thoughts and my fear kept growing, I heard some noise from somewhere and a voice calling, Aaron. Then that person quickly came to me, saying, are you okay, while forcefully peeling off the tape stuck to me. Although it hurt when the tape was removed because it had caught some of my hair, that didn't matter at all. When I realized the person who had saved me was Halia, I burst into tears of relief. Halia, how did you know I was here? When I asked this, Halia smiled mischievously and answered, twin sympathy, maybe? Well, actually being able to come here was thanks to Ron. I could tell you were feeling intense fear. I thought something might have happened and frantically contacted him, and when he said you might have gone to his parents' house, I rushed here. This is payback for when you helped me. While saying this, Halia finished removing all the tape that had been restraining me. Then Halia and I escaped from the soon-to-be demolished house and managed to secure our safety. Afterward, we contacted Ron to inform him we would file a police report, and together with Halia, I went to the police station, which led to my mother-in-law's arrest. While it was unfortunate that my mother-in-law was arrested, it was nothing but her own doing, and Ron said, don't worry about it. There's no way excuses like I didn't think I would get arrested can work after putting you through such an ordeal. My mother-in-law received a prison sentence and will spend several years in jail. Although her mental state wasn't good, it wasn't considered severe enough to be taken into account. There was no room for leniency. After that, the injuries I sustained from my mother-in-law's tackle healed, and I was able to attend Halia's wedding safely. It was truly a wonderful ceremony. From now on, I want to work hard to protect our own happiness.